Well, over 2,000 delegates are expected to attend Cosatu's 14th National Congress from today. It kicks off this morning, in fact. The Trade Union Federation is expected to report on the work done on behalf of its members since the last Congress and to take stock of the state of the organization. So let's get you a sense of why South Africans should pay any attention to this year's gathering. We're joined by Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, Matthew Parks, via our video line this morning. Matthew, great to have you with us on the program. And I suppose as you kick off your national conference today, one of the big questions for Cosatu is, will you be reflecting as a trade union federation on your job with workers, your role insofar as forwarding the plight of workers? In effect, what I'm asking, is there a sense that Cosatu needs to go back to basics?
Look, it's a moment, for accountability. Cosatu belongs to its trade unions, the members, the affiliates that constitute Cosatu. It belongs to the workers, the nurses, the teachers, the retail workers, the farm workers. So here's a chance for Cosatu to report back what has been done over the past 4 years. Some of our victories, like releasing 64 billion rand from the UIF to help 5.5 million private sector workers who had lost wages during COVID. Will reflect on some of the gains we have made in Parliament, like the national minimum wage, which has improved the wages of 6 million workers, in particular farm and domestic workers. We'll be reflecting also about some of the organizational challenges. We've had successful national protests against the rising cost of living, against unemployment, but also we have to reflect about what are some of the real challenges facing workers. And whilst we have made many victories, we also have huge difficulties. An unemployment rate of 44%, many SOEs in serious trouble, many municipalities failing to pay workers, workers being abused, sexual harassment at the workplace, and so forth. It's a chance also for us to say, some of our unions have done very well, for example, on supporting local procurement, on achieving above inflation increases for the members, on saving jobs. Some unions are also having difficulties. So what needs to be done to assist those unions? What needs to be done to assist workers who are not organized? 1 out of 4 workers belongs to trade unions, most of whom belong to Cosatu. So that's quite high internationally. But we should also be saying, what can we do to recruit the 3 out of 4 workers who don't belong to trade unions, especially those who work as Uber drivers, work at restaurants, work in farms, are domestic workers, work in construction sites, and so on. So there's a lot of work. We expect robust engagement. That's the nature of Cosatu. It's a very noisy, democratic institution, and that's what we want. We want people to raise the issues, to be frank, and to see how do we improve Cosatu, how do we deliver better protection to workers, what new campaigns we need to launch over the next 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you a question about whether Cosatu is inward-looking about the Trade Union Federation's relevance in 2022 and whether real strides have indeed been made. I mean, you've just given us examples of how you believe Cosatu is forwarding the plight of workers, but perhaps the fact that 3 out of 4 workers don't belong to a Trade Union Federation says something about that belief that Cosatu is indeed for the workers.
Yeah. Look, it's a challenge that not only Cosatu faces, but trade unions across every single part of the world. In the United States, only about 10% of workers belong to trade unions. In Europe, it's a little bit like 20%, 30%. But the challenge is for us, because the fact is workers are exploited. Workers are exposed to sexual harassment. They're female workers often. Workers are threatened with retrenchment. Many workers have lost wages. So the fact is workers need protection, and the best form of protection is for workers to come together to form trade unions. It's up to us to service members, to recruit them, to empower them, to help take up their cases. That's the best way of recruiting workers. There have been some successes on this front over the past 2 years. We actually thought we would lose significant amounts of membership over the past 2 years of COVID, with many jobs being lost. But actually what we found is that actually many workers are joining trade unions now for protection. Several unions actually joined Cosatu, including in the transport and the agricultural sectors, because they saw this is the best and most organized vehicle to protect workers. There are successes we can point to. We raised as Cosatu with government over the past 2 years the need to allow financially indebted workers, because all workers are drowning in debt, some limited access to the pension funds. It was a tough negotiation. We managed to get government to agree. There is now a bill before Parliament that provides for that. We hope to see it come into law next year. So those are the kind of bread and butter issues we have managed to achieve. But again, the fact is that you have an unemployment rate of 44%, you have huge levels of poverty, job threats, and so forth. It just points that we have so much more to do. No matter how many success we've achieved, we've got that much more we have to contribute to improve upon.
Yeah, it's a very different environment in 2022 compared to when Cosatu first launched as a trade union federation. And it leads me to my next question, Matthew, insofar as this apparent conflict of interest between, fighting for the rights and forwarding the plight of workers in our country, but also the fact that Cosatu and its leaders, several of its leaders have been deployed to government. So this relates to, the upcoming strike, one of the biggest strikes that we've seen in recent history, where workers will be expected to go to the picket lines on a no work, no pay policy. Just talk to us about, how workers are meant to read this conflict. On the one hand, Cosatu is fighting for this wage increase across the board, but on the other hand, Cosatu leaders are in government.
Yeah. Look, for us, it's a positive contradiction, and there always are contradictions. We always look at advancing workers' interests on every single platform we have, be it at the shop floor, be it organizing pickets or strikes or protests, be it on the media front. We also say how to advance workers' interests at NEDLAC, where we engage with government business, at Parliament, where we try to influence legislation. We also engage with the ANC, our ally. So there are contradictions. Working class struggles are never a bed of roses. You have to fight. You have to push. You'll offend people. There will be things which don't always make sense in the immediate picture, but in the long term you'll see it. For us, it's been about influencing the policy trajectory, the economic trajectory as much as we can. So for us, it's been positive to have former working class leaders go to government, because one, we bring people into government who have the consciousness of workers, if they know the issues, but you also have a relationship where you're able to phone the Minister of Labour and say there's a problem with the UIF, workers are not getting the money, can we intervene? We can phone the Minister of Trade and Industry and say clothing jobs are under threat because of cheap imports flooding the country illegally, what can we do, and so forth. Because we have a Minister of Finance who comes from the trade union movement, we're able to say workers are drowning in debt, can we give them some access to the pension funds? So those things have helped us. We think it actually would be much more difficult if we didn't have access to the levers of power, to governments, to be able to phone them and say we need to get the stuff done. It would actually make our struggles that much more difficult. But we've also been quite clear that our mandate comes from workers, from our members, from our unions. Yes, we might be in alliance with the ANC, we might have comrades who are in government, even former Cosatu comrades, but we will not hesitate to raise issues at a time to offend people. That's why you've seen that public service unions have not been afraid to go on strike. Last week, POP Group, the Police and Correctional Services Union, marched to union buildings to raise the grievance of police and correctional service officers around their conditions, around the declining headcount, the salaries and so forth. And that's what they must do, because that's part of democracy, to raise your views, not just suppress your views, to resolve them as opposed to ignoring them. And it is positive for us to have that relationship with government, but also not naive to think there won't be contradictions.
Right.
We have to protect our independence.
I mean, one of the big issues, you'll tell us how big the issue is when it's on your agenda, is this mandate on who Cosatu will back come December for the ANC's elective conference. Perhaps a harder decision to make this time around, at least harder than it was in 2017 with the backing of Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah. No, look, it would be a harder decision. Many workers would be aggrieved. Public servants are angry, correctly, that the government reneged on the 2020 wage agreement, denied them the increase that had been signed and they were due, so they've seen the wages being eroded. But we have to juggle up many issues. I cannot prophesy what will happen. Ultimately, the Congress is about workers deciding. So workers at the Congress, if they want to, it's not a specific item on the agenda, but it would come up in the Secretariat reports about our relationship with government, with the ANC and so forth, with the alliance. So unions will come with mandated positions, they'll raise their views. Unions may have different views because unions operate in different sectors. The agriculture and clothing industries are quite different from the conditions nurses and doctors face. But unions will raise their issues, they will determine if there is a need to endorse a candidate, or if we do not want to endorse the candidate, they will determine what is the trajectory for our relationship with the ANC, with the alliance partners. This is something Cosatu always does as Congresses. We've been doing it for many, many years. It's a robust, it's a very hot discussion. That's how it should be, because we should be held accountable, we should be holding our allies accountable and holding government accountable. And when they make blunders, we have to continue to raise it very sharply with them to get it corrected.
Matthew Parks, Cosatu's Parliamentary Coordinator, let me thank you for your time this Monday morning. The Congress of South African Trade Unions holding its national conference this week, kicking off today.